Welcome back to Communicology. The last time we got together, we talked about conflict communication and just gave a basic overview of it. Today, I'd like to get into basically 4 ways of managing conflict and show you just how they can be helpful and also how they could potentially be, problematic. And you can also decide which one's yours and figure out how could you possibly move to change within the other ones should you need to. So let's start off with the first one, and that is the process of avoidance. Now, people who avoid conflict, and again, we can discuss whether that's a true way of managing it, but it is an approach. So avoiding conflict is someone who's very low on assertiveness scale and also very low on the cooperation scale. So again, if you look at the idea of how, if you're low on the scale versus high on the scale, you're on the very low end. And you tend to be detached or indifferent to any kind of conflict. This is one way to, again, approach conflict. It's not necessarily a great way, but there are times when just avoiding the conflict resolves things. So, and sometimes it's even avoiding the conflict by not even starting conflict. So if you know there's going to be a problem with someone else, you just don't ever go near that person. So you just avoid it altogether. And basically, you avoid the problem instead of resolving it. And what this does, it creates this potential for what they call the spiral of silence, which is from scholar Noel Newman, the basic idea that instead of wrestling with, the opposing views, you just spiral down into silence. And as a result, your voice is missing from the picture. So that's, again, one way of doing it. But look at the pros. Obviously, if you know something's bad is going to happen, so just walk away before it ever does. In that time, in that moment, that might make sense. And there might be times when you do walk away. But like I mentioned in my previous episode, walking away doesn't get rid of the conflict. It just delays it. And it might actually just keep building in the background. It doesn't ever go away. All you're doing is avoiding dealing with it now. And there might be times to avoid dealing with it now. You know yourself. Like if you're the kind of person that gets lit up like a candle and you just need to back off and just go collect your breath and then come back when you have a cleared mind. Maybe you need to go get a coffee or something like that. That's perfectly fine. That's normal. That's okay. Because if you're like super angry and furious, that's not going to be a great moment to deal with your conflict. So again, moving away from it is a good thing in that moment. But ultimately, like I said, you never really get away from the conflict. It's still going to be there when you come back. And then, like I said, you spiral into that silence to where you just don't add anything. And that's a danger to the group, to the organization, to the family. You should have a say. And we should hear your say, because if we're going to operate well as a group, we need all voices to be heard. So by backing out of it, you're doing more damage than good. It's like you're thinking, but hey, I avoided conflict. No, actually, you've robbed us of your presence, and that's an important thing. The next one is the concept of accommodation. Now, this is, again, low on the assertiveness scale, but it's actually high on the cooperative scale. In other words, I want to get along, but I don't want to tell you what I think. So I'm just going to accommodate your beliefs. Again, we see this basically in the concepts of appeasement. You're just giving in, to go along to get along kind of thing. But, you can clearly see the big problem in this is that if something matters to you, you shouldn't just give it in. You should fight for what you think is right. Now, you can see where this matters because sometimes you can recognize that my opinion's in the minority and we run things very democratically here. So maybe this is the time for me to be quiet and let this happen, let you have your victory, and that's okay. And on small things, it doesn't matter. Like deciding where to eat. I prefer to have this, you prefer to this, and someone else wants these other things. And you're like, you know what? It's not worth you fighting over today, so I'm just going to give in. I'm not going to not go to lunch with you. Like the first one, I'm going to actually go to lunch with you, but I'm just going to give in and just go with whatever you decide. And this is something that's very useful in that, because sometimes keeping the peace is a good thing, but you're still present. So the accommodation part of that, I'm still highly cooperative. I still want to be part, but I'm just not going to choose this battle, this hill to die on is not that important. But of course, on the negative side, as I just alluded to, that if it is a hill worth fighting, dying on, it's the battle that's important, then you should speak up. It's important to have that assertiveness come in and tell us what you think. Because again, you're robbing us of your beliefs. You're robbing us of your perspective. You're robbing us of your knowledge if you keep it quiet. So it's important for you to speak up in those moments. Tell us what you think. Don't just be out there, I just want to go along to get along. That becomes problematic after time. And in the long run, the less you ever get involved, you start to eventually build up resentment in the other people. Eventually, towards the other people, you blow up one day and say, "You never take my opinion into account. You never want to hear what I have to say." It's like, well, you're the one that's never offered it. You're the one that chooses to always go along to get along. You set that stage. So again, low assertiveness. You're not speaking up, but you're highly cooperative. You want to still be involved. So there's a second one. The third one is competition. Now this one is highly assertive, but low in cooperation. The idea of winning at all costs. So I want my way or else, and again, low cooperation, which means if I don't get my way, I'm going to take my ball and go home. And this is someone who manipulates people. So in that first one, the idea of avoidance, I don't want to deal with the problem, so I'm just going to run away. Competition is you're going to do it my way or I'm leaving. So if you ever had conflicts with somebody and you don't do things exactly the way they want, or else they're going to withdraw from the situation, that's them. So when you see, this is very manipulative. You will do it my way. Otherwise, I'm not going to be part of this situation. Now, obviously, if you really believe in something and you think your way is right, it is good to fight for it. And it's important that you stand your ground and stick up for it. And if it's something that's truly important to you, you can see in this situation where it is important for you to not go along to get along. Again, if it's something that's deep, a core of belief of yours, why would I walk away from that just to make you happy? I'm not going to leave what I believe. If it's a small thing, like I'm not going to fight to the death over who gets to choose where we go out to eat for lunch. I mean, it's not that important for me. But you probably have had that person who's like, we're going here or else, because if we're not going here, I'm going to go by myself. It's like, enjoy, have at it, man. But that's, again, small thing like that, it doesn't really matter. But when it comes to deep things, it does matter. So that you do fight over things. But in that whole big area in between of stuff that kind of is fairly important, this person can seem, again, like someone who's very much a manipulator. And you can see the damage that happens because, again, if you're low on cooperation, which means you're low on being part of the community. If you're low on being part of the community, it's hard for us to work with you if you're always the my way or the highway person. Or that it feels like you're manipulating us, like you pull the I'm going to take my ball and go home if I don't get my way thing. And you'll see that happen as well. And it's, again, not a good way to deal with conflict. So that's one thing that we need to be thinking about when it comes to conflict, management styles. And another one is collaboration. So collaboration is basically when you're highly assertive and highly cooperative. Well, how can you do both, high cooperation and high assertiveness? Because if you're trying to get what you want, how do you collaborate well? But the thing is with this one, this is where, again, it takes everyone to be operating in good faith. That's step number one. So when I talked about classical argumentation in a previous episode, this is where we have to all be on that page. Because I will tell you what I believe, but I'm also going to listen to you about what you believe. And then we'll wrestle, not physically, of course, but we'll wrestle with the ideas and we'll discuss the merits and the weaknesses of all the ideas to come up with the best possible solution. And it's also based on the idea that neither is going to harm each other. Because again, if I'm working with the idea of high cooperation, I'm not acting to harm you. It's not going to be the take the ball and go home attitude or the say mean things to the other person attitude. It's going to be the I want what's best. You want what's best. We both recognize that we both want what's best. Let's talk about what that looks like. I mean, that's one of those things that's almost super rare today because you don't hear that kind of stuff, especially like on social media. You hear just the yelling and screaming my way or the highway a lot, and that the competitive style comes out. But, this idea that we should fight over what we believe for, but also listen to you and care about the other person, that's not, a bad thing. Now, in the grand scheme of things, it ends up meeting everybody's needs, and it's a win-win. Because at the end of the day, the win-win is that, we both care for each other, and that's more important than the thing that we're wrestling over. And, because at the end, we might end up picking my idea or your idea, but at the end of the day, we still care about each other. So we're still very clearly, saying what we want. We're being very assertive about it, but we're also being very high and competitive on cooperation, so we get along really well and we care for each other. And these people are typically the most active and productive problem solvers, because at the end of the day, we're looking for the best solution of the problem, not me and my ego. Remember last episode we talked about ego conflict. Ego conflict is my belief has to win because it's my belief, as opposed to my belief should win because it's the right one and the best one. And we'll wrestle with that and determine which one's the right one, which one's the best one, and we'll come up with that solution. So we see that as something, again, not very common, but this is like an ideal state. And it's hard sometimes to get there. Now, a fifth one, a bonus one to think about, is the idea of compromise. Now, compromise is, again, instead of low and high scale, we're at moderate assertiveness, moderate cooperation. So, again, with compromise, we're looking for a middle ground. And for that, one side or both have to give up something. So I'm going to give up one thing. I'll give up this. You give up that. We'll both meet in the middle. Neither one of us is going to be truly happy because we gave up stuff. And, it just doesn't feel quite right. We always talk about people need to find the middle ground. Well, finding the middle ground means that people are giving up stuff, and you might not want to give up what you're giving up. And some things, quite frankly, can't be fought with a compromise solution. Like, for example, the act of abortion. Either you abort a child or you don't. You don't half abort. Or the death penalty. You either kill somebody or you don't. You can't, go in between. It's one or the other. So you can't use compromise for that one. You can come up with compromised thoughts along the way, like with abortion, like no abortion after so many weeks. But with death penalty, we can argue the best possible way to use the death penalty, but at the end of the day, the person's still being put to death. So, there's not a really good way to have a compromise in there. Most other things, though, do open themselves up for compromise. But again, at the end of the day, you have a lot of people who are just being like unfulfilled. So how do these look in practice? Again, let's go back to the idea of thinking about going out to eat. So there's a group of 4 of us who want to go out to eat. Where should we go? Well, if you do avoidance style, you say, well, I know what the other 3 are not going to pick what I want. And what I want to eat is what I really want to eat. So I'm just going to go by myself and just avoid the whole conversation about where to go. And at the end of the day, great, you got what you wanted to eat. So that conflict that was going to happen about trying to decide where to go was missed. You avoided it. Congratulations. The downside is when you're looking at the idea of, well, what's next after that? And that is the idea of well, you're alone. So if the plan was that we're going to all get together and enjoy each other's company, you just lost. So you can see where there's pros and there's cons. I got what I wanted to eat, but I'm eating alone. And eating lunch alone can be lousy. So you can see where avoidance has its pros and its cons. Accommodation. Again, this is one of those go along to get along. Again, I want to go out to eat and I need food and I'm just going to, maybe I'm not a picky eater or I just don't feel like fighting. So I'll just, whatever you want to do, I'll go along with it. And they might pick something I really don't care for, but I'll go along to get along. Now I get to enjoy the time and fellowship with my 3 colleagues, but I also might potentially be eating at a place I don't like, or eating food I don't like, or spending more money than I would like. But hey, at least I'm with my friends, right? So again, you can kind of see and feel the tension that goes there. Now, competition, I know where I'm going to go, and I'm driving the car. So if you want to go out to eat, you're going where I go. So congratulations, you got what you wanted. But you've made everybody in the car mad, and maybe they just, they all decided, look, he's really competitive. Let's just all agree. And they all did the accommodation style just to go along to get along. But, like I said, you got what you wanted. Well done. But now they're upset. So like with the avoidance one, you got what you wanted, but you're eating alone. With this one, you got what you wanted. Now you're eating with 3 grumpy people. Boy, what a win that was. So neither one of those, obviously, you can see being a problem. Now, when it comes to collaboration, though, this is a neat one, because like the idea of, I want to eat here, you want to eat there, you want to eat there, and you want to eat there. We have 4 different things. What should we do? I know. Let's go through the drive-through of all 4 places and go eat at the park. Wait a minute. That means we all get what we want. Yes, we all get to eat what we wanted to eat, and we get to all enjoy each other's company. What a bonus. So you can see how that kind of works out. Now, again, I'm using a very simplified thing of these 4, conflict management styles, but, you can see how they can play out in certain situations, and not all of them work well. Sometimes, you do want to eat what you want, and you want to eat alone. And sometimes you want to eat and you're it's a good place, and you're trying to convince your friends that no, trust me, this is a good place, you got to try it, and drag them to it, with a competitive. Or maybe you just don't feel like fighting any certain day, like I don't care as long as we go eat somewhere, because I'm kind of hungry, but I don't care, and you just go along to get along. And sometimes like you're really caring that everybody gets everything that they want, which again, why I called it a win-win situation for everybody. Now, last one, of course, compromise. That's one of those things where we all decide we want to eat. We can't figure out exactly where. So we just all go, let's just get a pizza. So, we weren't looking for pizza, but, none of us were looking for pizza, but it'll do just because it's food. And then, we don't have to go anywhere. But I wanted to go out, and I wanted to go to get what I wanted. And, well, you wanted to go out and get what you wanted. Well, we're just going to stay in. We're going to get a pizza, and that'll just do. Does it work? Sure, of course it works. We all get food, but is it what we all wanted? No. Did we get to go out? No. So it's not very fun that way. Now, which one's the best way for best management style for conflict? Good question. And that's the fun part about conflict communication, because just like people are unpredictable, conflict resolution and management styles are unpredictable. You could have a different style for each different conflict and for each person in your life. So one friend, you need to take this tact. This friend, you take this other tact, and this other another tact. And it could be that this friend on these situations, I go this way, but the same friend with these other situations, I go this way. It's all fluid. The key thing is to know which one to use in which situation and with which people. So you can see it's like playing like 4D chess, trying to figure out how to best discuss this situation and how to handle the problem that comes your way. But that's where conflict resolution is very rewarding for people who are good at it. So people who are good at solving problems, are good at being able to see these things and to resolve them. So figuring out how I can best respond is, first of all, I need to know myself. I need to know the other as best as I possibly can, and I need to know the situation as I best possibly can. So in this particular moment, with these particular people, what's the best method to resolve this problem? There's no quick fix. There's no quick Band-Aid to put on it. You have to just wade in. And again, like I said before, it's really ideal if everyone is acting in good faith, because then it becomes so much easier. But when people are not in good faith, well, things kind of get messy. And maybe another time soon we'll talk about crisis communication, when the conflict really gets bad. And we'll talk about that another time. But that's what I have for you now. Thank you very much for tuning in to another episode. As always, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you didn't like what you heard, I thank you for hanging in this long anyway. But we'll see you another time on Communicology.